Okay, welcome to the School of Geography and welcome to Earth Surface Science. I'm delighted that you're all joining us, albeit in this highly unusual way. My name is James Bradley and I'm a lecturer in environmental science. I'll be convening this module, GEG 4209 Earth Surface Science, for geographers and for environmental scientists. And I'll be delivering some of the lectures that make up this course, along with my colleagues Geraldine Wharton and Heather Ford, both of whom are from the School of Geography. So, welcome to Earth Surface Science. Before going into the teaching material, I'll just take a minute to introduce myself and also my colleagues who will be teaching this course. I joined Queen Mary University of London in 2019. I did my PhD in physical geography from the University of Bristol. This was in Arctic biogeochemistry, so I looked at trying to understand how the cryosphere, that is the frozen regions of our planet, interface with climate, life, and biogeochemical cycles. I did a postdoc in the United States on the deep biosphere, that is understanding the life and biogeochemical transformations that occur in the biosphere that is contained deep within Earth, so in the sediments that underlie the ocean floor, and in the terrestrial subsurface, so the rock that is contained underneath our feet. I also work on trying to understand the co-evolution of life and environment, so how life emerges in ecosystems and shapes the environment in which it's in, and also vice versa, how the ecosystem shapes the nature of life within a system. So also teaching this course is Professor Geraldine Wharton. She's a hydrogeomorphologist. Her research interests are in understanding the interrelationships between the hydrosphere and the biosphere. So she does a lot of work, particularly in river restoration, the ecology of wetlands and rivers, and natural flood management. Also teaching this course is Dr. Heather Ford. She is a paleoceanographer, so she's interested in past climate, particularly in understanding the past dynamics of the oceans and understanding their geochemistry. Okay, so what are some of the phenomena we need to be concerned about when dealing with Earth surface science? Well, it's fundamentally important to view the Earth system as inherently interconnected. So we have processes that control the form, structure, and evolution of Earth and its landscapes, from the interfaces between soils, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, as well as how these systems interact with the chemical, physical, and biological processes occurring on the surface and within Earth. So the study of Earth surface dynamics is inherently interdisciplinary, as you'll see here. In order to gain a comprehensive understanding of Earth system processes, we need to develop our knowledge in a number of highly diverse topics, from biogeochemistry, hydrology, geology, biology, atmospheric dynamics. So this course will therefore touch on all of these aspects, and you're encouraged as you progress through the course to develop some of the linkages between these themes, as they don't exist as standalone phenomena. Earth surface processes can be framed within the concept of Earth system science, which is the application of system science to the Earth. So considering the interactions and feedbacks through material and energy fluxes between Earth subsystems, cycles, processes, and so-called spheres, that is the hydrosphere, atmosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere, we can start to gain integrated understanding as to how processes occur on the surface of Earth and shape the phenomena that we can observe. We also need to consider as well the impact of human societies on all of these different components, as we'll see that humans have become a kind of integral and interrelated part of processes that are occurring on and within Earth. So let's start by going into each of these in turn. Okay, so first of all, the hydrosphere. This consists of those parts of the Earth system composed of water in its liquid, gas, and solid phases. The hydrosphere includes Earth's oceans and seas, its ice sheets, sea ice, and glaciers, water contained in permafrost, also Earth's lakes, rivers, and streams, and Earth's atmospheric water vapor and crystals. And the hydrosphere also includes all of the moisture that is found in Earth's soils, so known as soil water, and within Earth's rocks, known as the groundwater. As you can see from the chart on the right, Earth's hydrosphere is mostly comprised of salt water, and there's only a minor fraction, in fact, that is fresh water. And of that fresh water, most of it is in a frozen form. So most of the Earth's fresh water is stored in the cryosphere. And in fact, the cryosphere can sometimes be recognized as a separate sphere entirely. So you would have the hydrosphere comprising the liquid and gaseous parts of Earth's hydrological cycle, and potentially the cryosphere comprising the frozen component of Earth's hydrological cycle. But together, all of these water sources are vital for sustaining life on the planet, and Earth is in fact the only planet in the solar system with an active hydrological cycle. Okay, so moving on to the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the thick layer of gaseous material which surrounds Earth. Earth's atmosphere comprises mostly nitrogen, so around 78% nitrogen, about 21% oxygen, less than 1% argon, and a minor fraction of carbon dioxide, only 0.04%, and then very small amounts of other gases. So the atmosphere is critical in redistributing heat and moisture across Earth's surface. Most of the atmosphere lies within around 100 kilometers of Earth's surface, but it doesn't have a definite boundary. It can be commonly divided into 4 layers, so the lowest altitude layer from around 0 to 10 kilometers in altitude is known as the troposphere. Above that, from 10 to 45 kilometers, is the stratosphere. From around 45 to 80 kilometers is the mesosphere, and then the upper part of the atmosphere, the thermosphere, from roughly 80 to about 300 kilometers of altitude. So Earth's atmosphere contains greenhouse gases. These are the gases that absorb and emit radiant energy within the thermal infrared range. They are critical at maintaining Earth's temperature at a level that's suitable to sustain life. So without greenhouse gases or the natural greenhouse effect, the average temperature of the Earth would be about minus 18 degrees centigrade or 0 degrees Fahrenheit, instead of its current 14 degrees centigrade. The major greenhouse gases on Earth are, in fact, the most abundant one is water vapor, H2O. Then there's carbon dioxide, CO2. Methane, chemical formula is CH4. Nitrous oxide, which is N2O. Ozone, which has the chemical formula O3. And a number of other gases such as hydrofluorocarbons or HCFCs. And there are many gases, many abundant gases within the Earth system that are not greenhouse gases. So those gases that do not interact with the radiant energy within the thermal infrared range. And they include oxygen, nitrogen, and argon, for example. And if we take a look at other planets and we expand this view of the composition of atmospheres, you can see that Earth's atmosphere is quite different to other planets in our solar system. Not least due to the absolute concentration of gases. So you can see, for example, that Mars's atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide, approximately. Mercury's is roughly 42% oxygen, but actually very different pressure at the planet's surface. So if you compare Earth's one atmosphere of pressure containing a small amount of CO2 to Mars's atmosphere, which contains a lot more CO2 by absolute concentration, but in fact the pressure is only a fraction of that of Earth, so contains much less total gas material. The lithosphere is the name given to the rock and minerals which form Earth's outer crust and its tectonic plates. So this is important for Earth systems as these rocks become eroded and weathered to provide important minerals to other Earth systems. So the rocky part of the planet contains the solid crust, the molten mantle, and the liquid and solid parts of Earth's core. But in the outermost layer of the lithosphere, i.e. the pedosphere, meaning the soil sphere. This exists at the interface between the lithosphere, the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the hydrosphere. So all of these processes combine, leading to soil formation, which is essential for sustaining some of the life on Earth. The surface of Earth's lithosphere is subject to a number of interreacting processes of erosion, weathering, and material transport, as well as being subject to tectonic forces, volcanic activity, and all of these combine to result in landforms such as mountains, hills, and plateaux. And finally, we have the biosphere, which refers to all types of life on Earth, including plants, animals, bacteria, or according to the major kingdoms of life on Earth, bacteria, eukaryotes, and archaea. Over the history of Earth, the biosphere has changed considerably, with a great number of species evolving, adapting, and becoming extinct. The diversity of the biosphere varies enormously across the Earth, as species can be highly vulnerable to even minor variations in climate or environmental conditions. So a slight temperature change or moisture change, for example, can alter the type of vegetation that's able to grow in a given location, which may in turn then affect the distribution of animals as they move or adapt in tune with the vegetation. And the biosphere is intimately related to the other three spheres. So most living organisms require gases from the atmosphere, they require water from the hydrosphere, and they require nutrients and minerals from the geosphere or lithosphere. Living organisms require a medium for life, and they're adapted to inhabit one or more of these three spheres. However, much of the biosphere is contained within a shallow surface layer encompassing the lower part of the atmosphere, the surface of the geosphere, and approximately at the upper 100 meters of the ocean. So it is at this interface where the majority of life exists. And humans are a part of this biosphere, although they're increasingly responsible for the creation of systems that might be considered largely artificial, such as cities. So when considering Earth surface science and Earth surface processes, it's important to recognize that Earth's surface is not constant or static in either space nor time. It's constantly changing across a number of different spatial and temporal scales. For example, by simply comparing these two aerial views of the Waiho River in New Zealand on the right, you can see that significant geomorphological change has occurred over a period of around 50 years. And this has arisen from the impact of natural processes on the landscape. Of course, this has direct consequences for people and societies who live on the surface of Earth. So we need to be able to monitor, manage, and predict these changes. In order to do so, and also to better understand and quantify the various processes that shape and give rise to phenomena on the surface of Earth, we've developed various tools and models of Earth's surface that can consider these processes that occur through space and time. As well as considering landscape and land surface change over time, we need to consider processes that occur over a wide range of scales. The processes often that we consider to be dominant will undoubtedly change depending on the scale at which we are observing the system or attempting to try to understand the system. For instance, at the reach scale of fluvial systems, so considering, for example, the whole catchment, we might be most concerned with hill slope processes, landscape topography, the nature of the flow of water through large-scale systems. At the intermediate scale, we might consider, for example, the impact of biology and biodiversity, so the burrowing of animals into river channels. And then at the very fine level, for example, at the grain scale, we might be interested more in sedimentation, sediment transport, and the interaction of sediments with water chemistry, for example, the dissolution and precipitation of minerals. And then we must also consider changes happening across much larger or longer timescales. In the context of Earth history, our planet has changed significantly, going through periods of glaciation and interglacial periods such as the present day. We've also had significant rearrangement of the tectonic plates, thus leading to changes in ocean circulation and global heat transfer. As you'll pick up through this course, changes in Earth systems, that is, its atmosphere, cryosphere, land surface, biosphere, oceans, etc., are driven by numerous interacting forces, including changes in plate tectonics, changes in Earth's orbit, changes in the strength of the sun. And this has given rise to sometimes dramatic changes or responses that occur sometimes rapidly, sometimes over the course of hundreds of thousands or millions of years. And they arise as variations in the cyclicity of Earth's state, most notably changes in Earth's temperature, locally and globally, but also changes to ice cover, vegetation, ocean physics and chemistry, and global biogeochemical cycles. Human activity has certainly also had a drastic impact on the Earth system. It's now abundantly clear that humans do have the capacity and the ability to change, for example, not only the way that our landscapes look around us, but also the flow of water through the Earth system. So major alterations to the hydrological cycle through building networks of cities, through damming mountainsides and rivers. But we also changed the chemical balance of the oceans. We changed the concentration of gases within our atmosphere. And arguably, we've entered into a new geological epoch driven concurrently by natural forcings, as well as the impacts of humans on the planet. Okay, so this module will cover a number of different themes. We've split up the Earth system into a number of different components, each of which will have its own dedicated lecture series, so covering things, for example, like the oceans, soils, fluvial systems, the biosphere, and these will be delivered over the course of semester A. There will also be a number of clinic sessions. Some of these are timetabled, so for example, the exam clinic in week 4, and some of them, the details will be provided as the course progresses on QM+. So we might add, for example, a clinic for glacial environments, but the details of that will be provided to you on QM+, so keep checking the module pages. Okay, so how will you learn? Well, we can frame this as a kind of iceberg model of learning, so the direct instruction from lectures and activities that might be posted on QM+, for example, might only comprise 20% or so of your learning, and you are encouraged. This is a process that you'll become much more familiar with as you get on with your university level studies, but a huge amount of your learning will come from reading and personal study. So the lectures are provided to give you only the bare skeleton of the module. So we will introduce in the lectures some of the basic concepts and structures and provide signposts and highlight themes for where you should explore with your own learning and your own dive into the literature. So we're not going to tell you everything that you need to know, because what you'll find throughout your university experience is that additional readings and the synthesis of information from different backgrounds leads to a more complete understanding of a concept that enables you to tackle assessments and apply learning, for example, in much more effective ways. So to complement the material that is delivered via lectures, you will be encouraged to engage and read with academic literature, which is very different from other types of media that you might be already familiar with that report on science. So, for example, news articles, magazine articles, and podcasts. Academic literature comprises a number of different types of publications, including research articles, review papers, opinions and perspective pieces, and also books and monographs. So taking first research articles, this is generally where scientists report their primary investigations. They are published in peer-reviewed academic journals, which are either of broad field interest, such as Nature, or report on specific particular fields, such as a journal that might report on hydrological findings. You might publish that study in the Water Resources Research Journal. If you have a high impact study on earthquakes or tectonic processes, you might publish that in a journal called Nature Geoscience. These journals are generally where you find the state of the art of a field of research, because they're primary results that are really happening at the frontier of science. You also have review papers. So these are papers that are written by scientists and generally provide a synthesis or overview of a particular topic. Other types of articles are perspective or opinion pieces. These are also written by scientists or academics, and they provide a reasoned opinion or perspective on a particular topic or problem in the field. You also have some journals offer authors a chance to debate findings of research articles, and these are generally in matters arising pieces. So if scientists disagree with particular findings or want to draw attention to a certain nuance of the study, scientists can publish these debate papers where you can essentially go back and forth, where scientists can flag up possible issues and then defend aspects of their studies. And then you also have books, book chapters, edited books with contributed chapters. So all of these phenomena comprise academic literature. And generally the major thing that distinguishes academic literature apart from regular literature is peer review. Peer review is the process by which one's work is evaluated by one or more people with similar expertise before a decision is made to publish it. So peer review typically works something like this. So a scientist or a group of scientists will complete a study and write it up in the form of a research article. They then would submit that article to a journal for publication. The journal's editors will take a look at the article and send the article out to several other scientists who work in the same field, i.e. their peers of peer review. And these scientists or these peers will anonymously provide their comments to the editor on the science and its strengths, its weaknesses, its nuances. And then they'll generally provide their comments to the editor, who'll make a decision whether or not to publish the article, which is very rare in the first instances, or return to the authors with required changes, which might include additional experiments. This is often the most common result of submitting a research paper, or if you've submitted a study potentially to a very high impact journal that is very selective as to what they might publish, the article might be rejected outright. Then the original authors can go back to their experiments, go back to their manuscript, carry out any additional requested work, carry out any edits to the manuscript, and write a rebuttal letter that defends their reasoning. This will be then returned to the journal editor, who will evaluate the work even further, might send it back out for further review, and then the process continues until everybody involved are satisfied that the study warrants publication or otherwise rejection from the journal. So it's tough to get published in an academic journal, but it maintains the kind of credibility and reputability of science that is published within highly regarded peer-reviewed journals. So reading and engaging with the literature is a really fundamental skill at university. You'll need to learn how to read critically, so you'll need to be able to look at the evidence and the arguments that are presented in academic papers, assess for yourselves the limitations of the design of the experiments that were taking place. You might need to look at the data and evaluate the interpretation that the authors have made, and then evaluate the influence or the various biases that might have affected the reasoning or the conclusions of this study. So engaging with the literature in a meaningful way takes a lot of time. We'll encourage you to engage with a lot of literature. You might be reviewing tens and tens of papers. But the module comprises about 150 hours of study time. Only 20 hours of this are lectures. So you are really you're encouraged to engage much more widely within your own time to get a full comprehensive understanding of the relevant literature, to do your own research and find relevant journal articles, and then enrich your answers to examinations or discussions that you have in tutorial groups with this academic literature as your evidence basis to support the various arguments that you're making. So you'll need to develop some critical skills towards reading and reviewing this literature. You shouldn't just, read papers endlessly, but when you're reading them, you need to be thinking really carefully about how to synthesize that knowledge. So you might write summaries of articles or books. You might draw mind maps that kind of highlight and link the key concepts and themes from multiple papers. You might synthesize a field of study to try to find out where the disagreements are in the current state of the art, or go back through the history of a subject and try to figure out how knowledge has developed over time as new findings have emerged. So you'll need to be able to kind of read this literature critically, and then encompass it within your sort of portfolio of knowledge in order to university studies.